let us start with the first keynote seminar of the day. Please give our warm welcome to our facilitator, Dr. Jeff Au. Dr. Au is Honored Journal Editor of Hong Kong Association for Science and Mathematics Education. Let us start with the first keynote seminar of the day. Dr. Au, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It will be my honor to be here to share with you, to introduce the first speaker of the keynote speech. Will be Mr. Siu-chung, the founder of the CEO of the Maker Bay Hong Kong. So, switch, okay? So the first speaker should be Professor Brendan Godley first. And Professor Godley is currently the professor of the conservation science from the University of Exeter. And he graduated in the Glasgow, and he focused on the study of the marine vertebrates. And I do interested in his talk about the sea tortoise. And I also watched his show in the TED Talk. That is about the sea tortoise united by oceans. And he is currently also interested in interdisciplinary approach. That is also very fit to today's talk's pick, which is about STEM and interdisciplinary approach. So his topic will be conservations of marine mammals, turtles, and education. Please, Dr. Godley.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me at the back? Can everybody hear me at the back? Yes, good. We'll just wait for a moment till the PowerPoint comes up. Sorry, we need to go back to the beginning. Can we get it to the beginning? There we go. There we go. So, this morning I'd like to talk to you about marine turtle conservation. It's something I've been doing since I was a very young man, a long time ago, for nearly 30 years now. I started as a teenager on student expeditions from the University of Glasgow. And what I want to talk about today, because this is a STEAM conference, about how those early experiences modified the way that I do education now at the University of Exeter. I'm very active on social media, so if you like anything that you hear today, please tweet it. I'll retweet you, and we can be friends on the interweb. So, I am a self-confessed turtle hugger, which means I really love turtles. It's been my great passion for 30 years, and it's shared by many people. This is Tony. He's a turtle fisherman from the British Virgin Islands, and I've worked with Tony to do sea turtle conservation in his home waters. And the picture sums up how many interesting and fantastic people I've been able to work with over the years on sea turtle conservation. Some of them who really like turtles because they like to eat them. Some are people that really like turtles because they want them to exist in huge numbers. Some of them who really like sea turtles because they want them to be a flagship for a marine protected area. I'm also a turtle geek, and I'm quite proud of it. I've been doing turtle science for over 20 years now, and as was mentioned, I did a TED Talk, so for you students out there, if you would like to see that or share it with your friends or any teachers, a very much digested version of this talk is available there. There are 7 species of sea turtles, and they're circumglobally distributed and are of conservation concern. They're not endangered with extinction. I know here in Hong Kong, you lost your small population recently, and we're hoping against hope that we'll get a nesting population back here in Hong Kong over the years. But they are of conservation concern because their numbers are vastly decreased around the world in comparison to their natural levels. And this is because when Europeans went colonizing the New World, it wasn't new to the people that lived there, but anyway, it was new to the Europeans. Sea turtles were plentiful and a great source of meat, and they would stay alive and be shipped around the world. They could be traded. They were also the source of tortoise shell for beautiful decorations. So they were heavily harvested during the colonial periods, and their numbers were very much reduced. But if I want to take you one message away from today about sea turtle conservation, is that the single most important thing for sea turtle conservation now, the major threat that sea turtles face is the indirect capture in fisheries. There are still some direct captured fisheries by indigenous peoples around the world, but the numbers that are taken in those fisheries are a tiny proportion in comparison to the ones which are entangled in gill nets, which are caught on long lines, industrial scale long lines, or caught in trawls around the world. And in some places in the world, trawl fisheries for prawns and shrimp catch more bycatch than actually catch shrimps. And sometimes sea turtles make up a significant proportion of them. My talk is 3 stories. The first one is how I started. It's a bit of a love story, actually, for those romantics out there. The second gives you a tour of the life cycle of sea turtles with some of the research findings that we've found out over the years. And then the last one is the story of this influence from all this field work and how I took it to help start up what I think is a very new and special department for education of degrees for the people that will save the world. So, if you're ever worried, young people today, if you're worried what you look like, don't worry, you look fantastic. You'll look back in 28 years to a picture when you were 22, like there, and go, wow, I wish I still looked like that. And here on the left, it's an old picture because it's quite grainy because it actually is from the days of actual photographs, analog photos. But this is my partner, Annette, and as she was 21, I was 22, and we were invited by this man on the right-hand side here, your right, Kutlai Ketcho, to come and help the Society for the Protection of Turtles in Northern Cyprus do their first scientific survey. So that's 1992. Hands up who in the audience was not yet born in 1992. All of you people in school uniforms were not born before 1992. You're just a bit shy. Anyway, it was a long time ago. But that project has continued and has been a very successful collaboration. Annette and I have co-supervised 25 PhD students. We've helped to write 200 scientific papers, and we've also co-authored 2 lovely children who are now young adults. So it's been a very good collaboration which continues to this day. The project is in Cyprus, and for those of you that maybe aren't geography majors, Cyprus is in the corner over there in the eastern Mediterranean, below Turkey to the west of Syria. It's an island. It's had a very complicated history, and because of that, by 1992, there wasn't much tourism development and there wasn't much research. So we were invited in. And so just as a bunch of young kids, 21-year-olds, with their friends on an expedition, we started to do surveys around all of the beaches of northern Cyprus, 46 beaches, every 2 to 3 days, counting the tracks, counting the nests. This allowed us to estimate the population. We started to instigate conservation. We caged nests. We started talking to local stakeholders, and it highlighted the importance of northern Cyprus, but really importantly, it resulted in a network of protected areas. But while we started caging all these nests against dogs and foxes, we greatly increased hatchling production. So a lot more babies went to the sea. We were scientists, so we started doing research, and so we started tagging animals. And once you tag the animals, it allows you to follow individuals, follow their nests, and do lots of really cool research. And And we've continued that year on year. We have an army of students out there tagging the turtles, monitoring the beaches all through the night. And now it's one of the world's best study populations. And this is me, age 21, out there in Cyprus, barefooted, no risk assessments in those days, tagging a turtle. That turtle is still nesting in the population. She was nesting in 1992. She comes back every 2 to 3 years, lays between 3 and 5 clutches. We know what size her hatchlings are. Because she's big, her hatchlings are big and strong. But we know lots of stuff about the population. And the value of these long-term data is that we keep increasing it, and it keeps getting more viable year on year. We started with very basic facilities. We started off just sleeping under a tarpaulin on the beach. It was quite tough if you work at night and try and sleep in the day, but we managed. And because of our commitment, Kutlai Ketcho, the man who invited us from the Society for the Protection of Turtles, ensured that we had proper facilities. So we now have nice accommodation, research labs, necropsy facilities to do post-mortems. And in fact, the students even managed to get dressed up and go out. This is them on their way to the British High Commission for a soiree. They have to make sure they scrub their nails because they've been in the field, but this is them dressed up to go and see the British High Commissioner. So since then, we started, we've had over 1,000 student volunteers on that project. It's a participatory ecotourism project. But the students get experience of hands-on conservation, real research resulting in over 50 scientific papers and 20 PhDs, and also environmental education, dealing with tourists, dealing with Cypriot people. They also develop teamwork, self-reliance, and which is really important and was mentioned yesterday in the talk, biophilia from E.O. Wilson, love and appreciation of biodiversity. This was all done with no major grants, lots of small grants, and lots of selling of T-shirts. And if anybody's involved in conservation, they'll know that conservation is mostly funded by selling certificates for adopted animals and T-shirts. I nearly used an expletive. But the great thing is, as the project's progressed and it's become well known in the society, 30% of the student volunteers now are from Cyprus. And the other great thing that comes from that, although many students are coming from overseas, is a fantastic cultural exchange in both directions, which I am particularly proud of. So there, the students will be on the beaches at night, tagging the animals, patrolling the beaches by day, caging them in the non-intensive study sites, and then at the end, baby turtles, who couldn't love them, digging up, making sure the last few get out, but also doing environmental education with people who come and visit the nest excavations, and then after dark, do the hatchling releases. I was coming to Hong Kong, and we've had a steady flow of Hong Kong students in recent years, and so I thought I would add the voice of some of the Hong Kong students, especially because I knew that there was Hong Kong teachers here, so I found out where the schools that they went to were. So Jeff Chan is just finishing his zoology degree, and he was at Wycliffe College and the Christian Alliance International and the Creative Secondary School. And he says, in addition to my field courses in the Spanish Pyrenees and the Galapagos, being part of the Cyprus Turtle Project was undeniably the most memorable and fulfilling learning experience I've ever had. I learned a great deal about field conservation, research, environmental education, as well as hands-on, technical, and transferable generic skills. Jeff was also the chairman of our employability committee, and he's obviously already mapping his CV to the needs analysis of major corporate employers in Hong Kong. He's obviously right on the button there. He says, the placement cemented my desire to pursue postgraduate study in ecology, which would better prepare me for a career in policy. And now this guy is really, really good, so expect him to come back, and I'm hoping that we'll be seeing him do great things here in Hong Kong. What Exeter offered me was a way of life as much as an education, with all of the support I needed along the way. The great thing is, we did all this in Northern Cyprus before the runaway tourist development that happens in many parts of the Mediterranean happened. These are some, well, I guess if you're a hotel owner, these are glorious sites, but maybe if you're a conservationist, they're maybe not so glorious. But these are the kind of sites we might have seen if we had been a bit late going to Northern Cyprus. But as it is, we still have places like this. Alagadi, the main study site, our main nesting site where we do all the tagging, was subject to being a specially protected area. There's one little restaurant at the back which is closed from 8 p.m. till 8 a.m., but it's left totally for the turtles. It's used by the public in the day, but they're managed to use the beach properly so that people and turtles can manage peacefully side by side. And that's one of 4 specially protected areas which encompasses 70% of the nesting around Northern Cyprus, which have now been protected, which really is, something to be pleased and proud of as a project. But along the x-axis here is the years since we started the project, and along the y-axis are the number of turtle nests at Alagadi on the north coast and the west coast of Northern Cyprus, the places where most of the green turtle nests are. And you can see 2 things. When we first started, it even started to look like the numbers were going down, but they stayed kind of steady for 15 years until they started to go up. So, 2 lessons: you need to be patient. Another lesson for the real scientists out here is that biological data are inherently variable, and so you need long-term data to have power, but fantastic upward trend. And it's also the same for the other species, loggerhead turtles nesting there. This is for green turtles. And again, something to be very pleased about. And now this is not it's not a unique situation. Most sea turtle populations around the world that have been subject to active management and conservation are now increasing. And so one of the things, and this is a beach in Australia where they're like rats running all over the beach. Very, very many turtles populations are increasing. And so my friend Heather Caldaway from Zoological Society of London and a few forward-thinking conservationists got together in the marine realm and created this movement called #OceanOptimism. And the point being is that we need to focus on these successes, these positive stories. If we all just focus on, everybody's dying of plastic, man, and everybody will just be fed up and you won't be able to get anybody to join in and make a change. We don't want nihilism, we want positive action. And so, ocean optimism, making the most of the success stories so we can build a movement. And it's been so successful within the marine conservation community, the other conservation community have jumped on the bandwagon, and you'll now start to see a generic #conservation optimism. But I would urge you, especially you young people, to start thinking of the wins, the positive things that have happened, and make sure more people know about the good things. We also have to think about the bad things, but then we can find solutions, but then we sing about the solutions and the positive change that has been enacted. Some early research highlights. We started monitoring the nest temperatures, and baby turtles, the sex is dictated by the temperature of the incubation, not by genes. So temperature sex determination. At 29 degrees, you have a 50-50 sex ratio. If it's higher, pink, it's girls. If it's colder, blue, boys. But we found that the populations in Cyprus are about 90% female production. So that's of concern as we face a warming climate, because these biased sex ratios could start to become too female biased, and those ladies in the audience may think, well, that can't be such a bad thing. But eventually we do need at least some males in a population, even if it's just to take the bins out. So, but one thing that we've learned about doing this sex ratio stuff is that it highlights the importance of the beaches which have white sand. The very white sand have generally cooler nesting temperatures, so they produce more males. And also, mostly at the start of the season, but sometimes at the end of the season, those nests are also very important because they're the ones that are actually producing the males. Once the baby turtles all dig out of the sand together, they come up to the surface, usually at night, and then scanning the horizon, they look for the lightest horizon. And so this is one of the sort of conservation issues which is being solved in many places as well. because if there are lights at the back of the beach, the baby turtles will go the wrong way. Instead of going to the sparkly sea, they'll go to the neon lights behind. So again, a bit of optimism in starting in the USA and mainstreaming all over the world. If there is development near sea turtle beaches, people can use sodium lights, which are at the red end of the spectrum, which marine creatures don't see, and so they aren't distracted and they go to the sea together. They run down the sea together, trying to swamp the predators, and then head out in the open ocean. And then, for 3 to 5 years, they go way out in the open ocean, out onto the ocean currents, and they're all alone. And this is in contrast to what Disney might suggest, with them on the eastern tropical current surfing dude. But they are all alone, they're out there in the ocean currents, and I'll talk to you about plastic, but I think that's the time that we should be most worried about them with plastic, because the baby turtles are being gathered in currents, the same place as the little bits of hard plastic are being gathered together, and at that point in time, they're not so fussy, they'll try anything, and we could be losing a lot of hatchlings because of them being damaged by the plastic that they eat out in the open ocean. After those 3 to 5 years, a green turtle will come in to the nearshore environment and typically will eat seagrass and algae. And the reason a green turtle is called the green turtle is because on its inside, if you look inside it, it's green. It takes the color of its food. So they're there, and for another 10 to 15 years, they're just eating their salad, eating seagrass, eating algae. And in these early years, either out in the open ocean or when they're in the nearshore environment, when they're new, this is when they start to have the problems with the plastic. And all of this 150 pieces of plastic, including this balloon, ironically with a skull and crossbones on it, was taken out of one little baby green turtle, 33 centimeters long. About 85% of the sea turtles in the Mediterranean that are subject to necropsy have plastic in their gut, but the other 15 are probably sick for another reason, haven't eaten for ages, and have passed the plastic through. And this graph is from the PhD of my student, Emily Duncan. And what you see along the bottom is the size distribution of the animals, and up along the y-axis is the number of pieces of plastics. And you can see that when the animals are young, maybe they're a little bit young, a little bit silly, they're not so wise, and they're less picky in what they eat. And so they're eating an awful lot more plastic, many of them 150, 200 pieces. And then as they get older, a bit wiser, although your parents will tell you they're wiser than you, they actually are wiser than you. But anyway. And we'll be talking about the fusion of art into science. Emma Wood, the illustrator, is a science graduate, but also an arts graduate, and we've started to commission her to do some lovely art as part of our scientific publications, so that Kenny will laugh, so that we can get it into better journals, of course. We've also been looking at microplastics, and we've looked at microplastics in sea turtles in the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean. We've looked in all 7 species, and in every single individual, we have found microplastic. Now, this is a problem, but it's more of a problem of like a canary in a coal mine. It's just telling us how much damage and how far this issue has reached. We are all breathing microplastic as we speak, coming off the carpet and anybody's polyester clothes. It's on the top of the mountains. It's in the salt you put on your breakfast. It's everywhere. But it's also in every single turtle. We've also got it in every single dolphin, every single seal. Now, none of these animals that we've subject to post-mortem died because of the plastic, but we think it's still something that we should be looking at. Because the plastic issue isn't getting better immediately, but you guys, especially the younger ones, are the ones that will have to affect the change. So after growing up in this juvenile environment where they've dealt with predators for about 15 years, both the males and the females start to migrate back home. Now, they do this amazingly sometimes from 2,000 kilometers away. It'll take them 6 weeks to swim there. They'll mate. Then they will take a month to produce the eggs. And then they will have 5 clutches every 2 weeks and then swim 6 weeks back. You add all that together, it's 6 months. They do all that without eating. So only an ectotherm, a cold-blooded animal, could do such a thing because their metabolic rate is sufficiently slow that they can live off the fat. But that's why they don't breed every year. Typically, turtles will breed every 2 to 3 years because they need to go and replenish their stores before they come back again. Mating happens off the nesting beaches typically, and our genetics suggest that the genetic samples that we've done over the years suggest that the males and the females migrate back home, not to the precise nesting beach, but to the same vicinity. So the turtles from Cyprus will come back to Cyprus generally. Males are slightly less fussy, as we all know, and they move around a bit and put the genes moving around a bit slightly more than females. We've also managed to capture the hatchlings and take tiny biopsies and do paternity analysis, and we've found that most clutches are fathered by more than one dad. That's probably in the interest of the females, and the males, but consequently, they fight to get access to the females, and they'll bite each other. And in fact, sometimes the males will have bitten each other's flippers so much you can see the bones. But at that point in time, hormones tell us that the cortisol level goes up, which switches off the testosterone, makes them stop feeling like mating anymore, and so then they migrate back in time to save their lives. So, after the mating, there's a month, the female comes back onto the beach and completes this cycle from hatchling all the way through multiple foraging grounds over 20 years, and will lay 3 to 5 clutches typically, some places as many as 10 clutches, and then covers the nest very much if she lays eggs. If she doesn't lay eggs, she doesn't lay so many clutches, and then crawls down the beach. And so by leaving these tracks, even if we're not on the beach at night, we're able to count the number of animals that were on the beach and know what proportion laid nests, and that's what we use as a proxy for the population size. So on these nesting beaches, this is another one of the protected beaches, and it looks lovely. It's one of the white beaches, which produces males, so it's very important. But the Mediterranean has a huge problem with plastic. And so this beach, if it wasn't subject to cleaning by the volunteers, would have an awful lot of macroplastic, but also microplastic. The beaches of northern Cyprus are subject to an awful lot of plastic. And this graph here goes down in depth of the sand, and you can see the little illustrations as to how deep the turtle nests would be. And then the value in the curve is the number of thousands of pieces of microplastic per cubic meter. And you can see it's up at about 45,000 pieces of microplastic per cubic meter at the surface, but it declines as it goes down to depth, but at 60 centimeters deep, there's still 5,000 pieces of microplastic per cubic meter. Watching the student presentations the day before yesterday, I was struck by how much interest there was in plastic among the students in Hong Kong, and I think rightly so, because these beaches are very plasticky, but there is only one beach which had more microplastics in it in the published literature than Northern Cyprus, and unfortunately it was here from Hong Kong. The influence of the Pearl River and lots of effluent coming down means that your beaches will be subject to very high levels of microplastics. The story in Cyprus, because there's no real industry in northern Cyprus, and the oceanographic models suggest that the plastic is mostly coming all along the coast of North Africa, up past Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and also from Turkey, and landing on the coast of northern Cyprus. Many of those countries are either quickly industrializing or have had more important things to worry about than waste governance in recent years. And so the plastic in the Eastern Mediterranean is really, the large plastic is something to behold, much worse than here in China. So anyway, In the future, if this plastic gets worse, we think it could affect the incubation conditions of the turtles. It could take toxins into the nest. We've done some preliminary analyses at the moment, and we don't think it's a significant issue at the moment, but we've engaged with our own undergraduate student projects, and we've got people sending sand from all over the world, from 130 different projects, and we're doing a global review so we can have a baseline for 2017 and see how things change as time goes on. The main problem, as I've said, is incidental catch in fisheries. That is the #1 problem for turtles around the world, whether it be long lines here or gill nets there on the right. But it's a really big ocean once our animals head off into the sea. If you ever go out to sea to try and find something, you'll realize how big, as soon as you go around the harbour wall, the sea becomes massive really quickly. So for this, we've been using satellite tracking, where we put radio transmitters on the animals. They go up to a satellite, send us location data. Sometimes they send us dive data too. And this I could talk to you about for another hour, but I'll just give you one slide from our turtles in Cyprus. And you can see we've tracked 30 green turtles from here in Cyprus, from the star. And the black dots tell you, with the number, tells you where those animals lived. And so we have a very important area here in western Libya, one in eastern Libya, one up in Turkey. And then the intensity of the red tells you how important a corridor for migration it is. And I'll tell you that there are fisheries going on in all of these areas along the coast, and this red area off the coast of Western Cyprus is now annexed for intensive exploration for oil, seismic activity. So at least the authorities know that this is an issue and that it will need to be considered as part of it. But the other point is that from that little beach in Cyprus, there are 7 countries involved in the future of that little nesting population. You know, it's an international thing. Marine conservation is very international. Some small things we can own in our own place, but typically it's shared with multiple countries. Some of these turtles have dive loggers on them, like little dive computers, and we've got depth on the y-axis of these graphs and 1 day in the life of a turtle along the x-axis. And so up on the top, you can see this is in the summer, and the turtle dives down for half an hour, munch, 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 munch. Oh, I'm being very active, I need to take a breath. Half an hour only, back up to the top, breath. Breathing, working away, working away, working away. But then, once you get to the winter, the seagrass stops to grow in the Mediterranean because it's quite cold. And so the sea turtle sits on the bottom of the sea for 6 hours, gets up, has 1 breath, goes back down to the bottom of the sea, rests for 6 hours, has a breath. So if you ever thought you've had a boring day, just imagine how boring it would be if all you had done was had 4 breaths. But we know where these animals live, we know where they're spending their winter, and we're starting to work extensively with fishermen. And this is Robin, who now runs the Society for the Protection of Turtles. It's another love story. He met a lady in Cyprus. They now have 2 sons, and he's now there working with her, running the Sea Turtle Protection Society. But he's working really well with the local fishermen to the point where the fishermen, if the turtle's live, when they're captured, they'll tag them, measure them, photograph them, release them. If they're sick, they'll bring them to the rehab center. If they're dead, they'll bring them to the research station for necropsy. But just another little touch of ocean optimism. We've been working in several fisheries around the world, putting green LED lights on fishing boats. And we've managed to get 60% reduction in bycatch from putting simple LED lights on nets. And so this points to the hackathons for marine conservation that have been going on this week. Somebody somewhere said, why don't we put LED lights on nets and let's mess around with the wavelengths so that it doesn't upset the fish and it scares away the turtles. There are other ideas out there in young minds that need to be brought forward. 10 minutes left. Fantastic. It's 10. Yeah, that's good. Oof. I thought it was 1 for a second because my eyes are old. So this marine conservation, this working away in the field, running expeditions, we managed to do it in such a way that we were doing conservation, real conservation, but also doing research. And so both Annette and I managed to find positions at the University of Exeter. And we helped set up a brand new department called the Centre for Ecology and Conservation. And it's down in the Penryn campus, right at the end of Cornwall. And because this is an educational meeting, I wanted to tell you how I'd taken all my experiences and how it shaped the brand new degrees, because we were starting totally from fresh. New department, new campus, new degrees, so we could revision everything. So it's a nice place, it's nice and shiny. And it's, I think, is a very new and special department. We've grown from 3 to 50 academics in 10 years. We started off with a very brave group of 9 students who came to start studying on a building site. Most of them have gone on to do PhDs. They were just crazy adventurers, pioneers. But now we have 200 students per year, lots of master students, PhD students. All of that done in 10 years. And part of that is because we've become a very strong research institute. And I don't really believe a lot in league tables, unless, of course, you score really well in them. And so we became 6th in the Shanghai league table in the world for ecology at the University of Exeter, because we grew ecology with lots of good new people. But Cornwall is also a wonderfully scenic, clean, and very safe part of the world. It's a great place to be a student. It's got lots of views, lots of villages and fishing towns. It's the home of the Eden Project, which is a massive transformation from a China clay mine into this beautiful gardens and sustainability iconic campus. For those of you who like period dramas, it's also the home of Poldark. But it's home to amazing wildlife. The population isn't very high. There's lots of still very wild places. We can still see dolphins and puffins and badgers and foxes and seals, basking sharks. And so it forms a real natural laboratory for us to do student projects in. And that's why we set out to set up a department where we would deliver the degrees to students that will necessarily save the planet. We're in a biodiversity, it's not just a climate emergency, it's an environment and climate emergency, and there needs to be people to save the planet. And if anybody tells you, oh, it's all about business, remember that all business is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. If there's no environment, there's no business. And so we've set out to have the degrees to give the students the skills that will save the planet. So it's environmental science, conservation biology, zoology, animal behavior, evolutionary biology, and marine biology. We have degrees where students go away for a year. We have degrees where students go and do a professional placement for a year, or they stay on, the really academic ones, to do an master's. One of our key aspects is we have field courses in every year, residential ones where we go away all together, up to 2 weeks long. We actively share these on social media using the hashtag Exeter Global. So in the summer and then also after Christmas, there are bouts of these field courses going on, and you can see what the students are doing in Costa Rica and Borneo and Tenerife. And my students, I take them to Kenya. And in these field courses, we take all the theory that people have had in the classroom, but very much put them into practice. Not only as in how the ecosystems are, how the animals are behaving, but also how the active conservation practitioners are working to save the biodiversity in those nations. We teach field skills, but I think the intangibles, what are really important within these field courses, is that students become inspired to do more. And by being in the field all together, it builds a cogent, strong cohort, which is supportive during the stressful periods of their education, but also going forward as a network in life. And so as an example for about field courses, Winky Leong, she did her BSc Environmental Science with us. She's now a master's student. In fact, she's actually studying turtles with me for her master's. Perfect timing. And she says, and she went to IVE and the CCC Mong Mai Wai College. She says, my time with the University of Exeter has been amazing. Wonderful field trips, advice from lecturers, and diverse module choices have allowed me to explore the world of conservation for the last 3 years. This year, the Kenya field trip has been a real eye-opener. I wouldn't have had the same at other universities, and it was a wonderful chance to make great new friendships that I'm sure will be lifelong. And for the sharp-eyed among you, you'll see I'm actually in those pictures. And I'm looking very tired after looking after 31 students for 14 days in Kenya as we move between 6 different parks. But I'm still enjoying myself, but I've just got my resting grumpy face on because it's 5:15 in the morning, even though we've just seen a baby elephant. So, the need for transferable skills. This was as we ploughed our way through being self-funded for 10 years, raising money to do conservation work, we realized how you have to have many different skills to succeed. It's not just about knowing stuff. You need to know how to do stuff. And so this is just some of the organizations that funded our work in the early years. And so from 21, we were writing proposals, starting to learn how to give presentations, networking skills. We had a website for the Marine Turtle Research Group before the Zoology Department at Glasgow had a website for the department. You have to sell things, you have to use social media, etc. And I'm inspired by yesterday's talk and thinking about transformative learning and putting the A in STEM, I realized that we've been encouraging people, not realizing it was the A part, but we've been encouraging people to do complementary things, which are effectively that. So we really encourage our students on, it's quite a small campus with 1,000 students. We support the student societies, so we have an ECOSOC, which is bigger than the Sports Society, a Wildlife Documentary Society. We have students that make their own TV programs called Nature Watch, if you find them on Facebook. So impressive, very professional. They go on expeditions. Some of them like bees and pollinators. Some of them will go diving. And then we've even had a Zero Waste Society focusing on keeping the university in check about its ways of using waste. And then Betty Sang, who studied at Sha Tin College and is finishing conservation biology this year, she actually expounds these virtues. Students are encouraged to get involved with a large range of societies. I was involved in Herpetological Society, doing Tang Soo Do, which is a martial art, and then she started the Zero Waste Society. And she says, our activities include DIY cosmetics workshops, foraging trips. They go and gather mussels and seaweed. It's clean enough you can just go and eat what you can find in Cornwall. And by doing this, I've learned how to lead a team, transferable skills, making the world a greener place through lifestyle-based approaches and strong friendships with like-minded people. My PhD student, Sarah Nelms, when she was doing her PhD on plastics, got together with a whole bunch of other graduate students and created a series of books about Professor Penny. Professor Penny, it's a children's series of books, all freely available on the web. And Professor Penny is a scientist highlighting that it's not just boys that become scientists, it's also girls. But each story has a different research-based theme. And so Sarah's The Tale of the Turtle and the Plastic Jellyfish is very nice. It's available on issue.com, freely available. It's not yet in Cantonese and Mandarin, but she's had offers, but she does have it in 8 languages, and it's been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. And so the bit of the fusion of science, communication, but also art there too. This is Sir David Attenborough. For those of you that watch BBC-related programs, he, to us in the UK, is a god. He's one of the people that inspired me to do biology. We have 4 of our recent graduates working in the BBC Natural History Unit. And these are all the students that started making natural history films at university. You can't become something without doing it. That's the message we tell our students. So you start doing it when you're at uni. That's great. So, I've talked quite a lot about me and a lot about turtles, but this work over 30 years has seen me working with thousands of amazing people in a lot of different countries. And I just wanted to acknowledge that it's a synthesis. Everything I say today is a synthesis of all the stuff that these people have told me, these people have written, the data they've collected. So I'd like to thank my students and colleagues for all their support. I'd thank you very much, Ocean Park, for the invitation and allowing me to come here, and the hospitality. And I hope that I've convinced you to be a little bit more of a turtle hugger, and perhaps I can even encourage some of you to come to Exeter and be a turtle geek. So we all have a responsibility to protect our blue planet, and hopefully together with the educators here in the room, we can train those who will do that job. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Godley. It was really nice to hear all about his expertise and how his team and he himself has done so much on marine conservation.